And we're joined now by Albert Breer, NFL insider for the MMQB.com, but also up in New England, CSN New England. Albert, Tiki, and Tierney, what's happening, buddy? How are you?
I'm good. How you guys doing?
Good. I mean, did you get wrapped up in a frantic search to see what was going on with Garoppolo's social media, or did you dismiss that kind of quickly? What happened?
Well, I woke up a little earlier than I intended to be honest with you. It's funny because we have to react to these things, and it's this time of year. People read a lot of things into everything that every player does. And so, what does it mean when Jimmy Garoppolo says goodbye to New England on Instagram? Well, the first thing you do is you try to figure out if that means the trade's been worked out and he's been informed of it, and then you find out that that's not happening, and then it's still 5:30 in the morning and you're up and can't get back to sleep.
Ugh.
So that's sort of the way it works.
Yeah. No, the other big thing, and again, I think that's probably a little bit of nothing with Jimmy Garoppolo. As we all know, the asking price is probably too high, but we'll see as it plays on. But the other big story from yesterday was the trade that the Browns did a favor for Houston by taking Brock Osweiler off of their hands, and it feels like it's a trade from a different sport. How did this come down? How did this happen?
Well, I think it's pretty simple, Tiki. It's what you see in the NBA. I don't know if you see it in baseball as much, but the Browns basically identified a distressed asset for another team, to use a business term, and they took advantage. And so they saw a team out there that needed desperately to get out from underneath a bad contract and would be motivated to do that, and said to themselves, okay, well, what can we get? What can we get for taking that off of their hands? And in a way, they're using that $102 million in cap space as an asset as well, because there's no way that they were going to spend all of it. So they said, why don't we take a part of this cap space that's burning a hole in our pocket right now and see if we can turn it into something, and turn it into something other than a veteran player. And I think it was smart business by the Browns. Now, I want to tap the brakes here with, all the praise that we've given the Browns over the last 12, 18 hours, whatever it's been, and say that eventually this is going to be about picking players. Eventually it's about putting the best players on your roster. And they've been down this road in Cleveland before where, the trade with the Jets in 2009, when the Jets moved up to get Mark Sanchez, that didn't wind up that got them a lot of picks. They didn't wind up doing a whole lot with them. Same thing in 2011 when the Falcons moved up with them and to get Julio Jones. They wound up with a huge amount of picks out of that deal, and they wound up being fool's gold. And so eventually for the Browns, there's going to have to be about picking players. But I think what they did yesterday was certainly signifies smart, creative business.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think Tiki agrees, too. Albert Breer, NFL insider, the MMQB.com, CSN New England. Obviously, want to bounce around to some of the other moves. But the thing that I would say about the Browns this year, they almost can't mess this up because I don't know how draft-intensive you get. Myles Garrett's going to be a superstar. I mean, you have to take him. So right away, if he's healthy, you got a franchise changer. So I don't know how you can mess that up.
Yeah, I think the question then becomes what you're going to do with the rest of the picks. And you've got so many of them. And here's the larger question, Brandon, is, okay, so there were points last year where you were carrying 18 or 19 rookies on your roster. 40 of the 74 players that you're carrying right now either have one accrued NFL season or less. You're looking at potentially now putting another 11 draft picks on your roster, plus any undrafted free agents. Eventually all this is going to have to amount to something. And so, you wonder, when are they going to start to package these picks and maybe back? Maybe they try to use a couple of picks to go and get a Jimmy Garoppolo. The bottom line is that it looks great when you have all of these picks and you've created this margin for error for yourself. But it's eventually going to get to the point where you're going to need to build a core of 8 to 10 players that are going to be the basis for everything that you hope to accomplish for the next 5 to 10 years.
No, I got you. It's fair. Mm-hmm.
And Myles Garrett's one of those guys. Myles Garrett should be one of those guys.
Did we lose Albert?
like that. I mean, maybe Corey Coleman becomes that.
Mm-hmm.
Eventually you have to come up with those sorts of players. That's the challenge now for the Browns.
Let me ask you this, though, about one of their players who might be a former player. I mean, Terrelle Pryor it's amazing that he's transformed himself into a good wide receiver. The question I'll ask, though, and this kind of pertains to Alshon Jeffrey, obviously Torrey Smith's a bit older, but, is Terrelle Pryor, do we look at him as a good receiver because there's really nobody else to catch the football and it was garbage points, or is he truly just a good wide receiver at this point?
I mean, I think you're betting on potential with him. He's a good wide receiver now, which is, says a lot about the effort that he's made to transform himself because, God knows that's not an easy transition to make. That's a lot of work going from being a guy who's always had the ball in his hands on every play to playing a completely different position. So you got to give him credit for that. I think what the Browns have looked at with him and what I think other teams that would look at signing him have looked at with him is, where is his ceiling and how much more can he be than what he is right now? And so that's where his value is. It's what he can become down the line rather than what he is right now. And what he is right now is a pretty good football player who obviously there's a reason why they didn't tag him. He's not a top of the NFL receiver. The question becomes whether or not you think he can get there because he's got some pretty impressive physical traits.
Albert, where do we think Tony Romo's going to end up ultimately?
I think Houston's the odds-on favorite right now just because there's a match there on both sides of it, right? Like, John Elway and Denver's approach to this has always been, well, we'll look at it, and if we see an opportunity there that makes sense for us, we'll strike. Whereas I think the Texans genuinely look at Tony Romo and see a system fit. Now, it's important to remember the first 4 years of Tony Romo's career, he was playing in a system that's basically a first cousin of Bill O'Brien's system. And, look, they're very much a win-now team. They've got the number one defense in the league. They'll have J.J. Watt coming back. They should be healthier on the offensive line. They've got a pretty good group of skill position players. It feels like they're in a window right now where they should be able to compete to get to a Super Bowl, and they've got a hole at they've got the hole at the most important position in the game. And so I think from the Texans standpoint, it makes sense to go in on a player like Romo, who you do believe is a system fit. For Romo, I think it makes sense for some of the same reasons, also because it's less than an hour flight from where his family is, and he's not going to uproot his family. And, there's some familiarity with the situation he'll be going into. So for all of those reasons, it makes a lot of sense. Now the question becomes how far the Texans are willing to go to make it happen, and that's going to be up to management. Are they willing to flip a draft pick to go and get him from Dallas if he's released? How far are they willing to go financially? Mm-hmm. Those are all the questions that need to be answered. But I'd say on paper, the fit right now that makes the most sense, and I don't think it's that close, is the Houston Texans.
Well, I'm going to throw a wild card at you. And family logistics and home logistics aside, which obviously you can't just brush aside.
Yeah.
I mean, it's huge. But why wouldn't the Jaguars kick the tires? Marone, Coughlin, good receivers, love what they've done on defense. Why not?
Because I think that the Jaguars right now are committed to finding out what they have in Blake Bortles, and I don't think that means that they're committed to Blake Bortles being their quarterback in 2020 or 2021. I think it just means that they've invested so much time, money, that draft pick in him. They want to figure out what they have. And, there was a lot of optimism coming out of the 2015 season for good reason. He'd done a lot of work between 2014 and 2015 to rebuild himself mechanically. And I know there was a point last summer where he's in a meeting room with his coaches, and he sees the way he's dropping the ball and the way he's winding up again. And he said to one of his coaches, I can't believe I'm doing that stuff again. He did not do the same amount of work between 2015 and 2016, mechanics tight, as he did between 2014 and 2015 to tighten him up in the first place.
Interesting.
And so I know there's some thought in that organization that if he puts in the work necessary, that he can get back to where he was in 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And if he does that, they can get a more clear read on who he is as a player. I just don't think they're at the point now organizationally or they're ready to raise the white flag on the Blake Bortles project.
That's good intel. That's really good. Talking to Albert Breer. Going to wrap it up. Of course, NFL Insider, the MMQB.com, CSN New England, with us here on Tiki and Tierney.
Hey, Albert, we only have about a minute here, but the Redskins are a mess. Scott McCloughan has been fired. How much of this was the, quote, power struggle, or how much did he actually go into an alcohol relapse? What do we know?
I don't think, well, as far as his demons go, Tiki, I'm not going to say they aren't there. I just, from what I understand and having talked to coaches and players been around him, not much has really changed over the last 18 months. So you can say it was an issue, but the timing of this throws into question whether or not it was the issue. I mean, to me, and from what I know and what I've gathered over the last week and a half, this is really about power, and it was about Bruce Allen versus Scott McCloughan, and it was about who was making the decision. And I think as much as anything else, it was about a structure they put in place in January of 2015 and the organization going back on some promises that were made and how that created friction. And so, I mean, I can take you guys through the decision-making, some of the decision-making where those two were at odds. One was the franchise tag and Cousins, another one was, how they were going to go forward in rebuilding their defense. In the short term, I don't know that it's going to affect the organization that much because the free agent board had been set and they sort of followed the course that had been set there over the last 2 days. And the draft board has been set, but
Gotcha.
I don't think there's any question that roster's in much better shape than it was 2 years ago. The middle of the roster is stronger. The ball.
All right, you know what? We're losing him anyway, and really generous with his time, but we're up against the break anyway. Of course, Albert Breer, NFL Insider, the MMQB. Appreciate a couple of minutes there. Good stuff on the Jaguars. My question would be, Blake, why didn't you practice going into last season, buddy? I mean, you're a quarterback, kind of important.
Sometimes the desire of some of these guys baffle me.
Your third year in the... Yeah, exactly.
It baffles me.
Man, oh, man. He is one big question mark.